we always had a Malik of some sort, an employer of some sort. We would negotiate, bargain, work out with the Malik because the Malik needed us, we needed the Malik. Today, your Malik is your phone. We lifted up this phone and showed. Our entire gamut of labor laws is based on the idea that there is one employer who hires one employee and they work in a given workplace. Somebody could be a delivery person for Amazon one day, they could be a delivery person for Flipkart the next, they could be working for Porter. There is no clear one-to-one correlation. On the flip side, it has also meant the employer is not exactly sure this person is working only for me. How can we claim our rights under the Social Security Code? And my answer was, you can't, because number one, the code isn't law yet. Number two, you don't have any particular rights as gig workers. How do we kind of ensure that the worker is taken care of at the quote unquote workplace? For most workers, the workplace is their own two-wheeler, four-wheeler, three-wheeler. For an urban company person who's coming to your home as a plumber, as an electrician, as a masseuse, or a beautician, their workplace are other people's homes. How do we imagine a legal framework which accounts for this complexity? Where it becomes an issue is if a worker suddenly finds that I've stopped getting rights. I'm on the app, I haven't been kicked out, I've stopped getting rights. Why is this happening? Number one, the platform has to be registered. The platform should come forward and say, I will register myself. Number two, the worker also has to get registered. State government does not have that kind of machinery to be able to look at the entire results of a corporate and say, this is my share, give me some part. What part of the transaction is being subject to GST is easily broken up and the total given. All that platforms are required to do is add one more column to this welfare fee, right? Paid to state government. So the machinery is there already for implementation. There are a million demands on that limited pool of taxpayer money. Tell us what you can do. Tell us how you will be part of the process. Tell us how you will contribute. India doesn't innovate just in terms of technology. It's also innovating in terms of governance, in terms of innovations of laws, where this is how India has found a way to smooth out the difficulties or the kinks that the platform economy creates. And the rest of the world should come to us, to Bangalore, to say, oh, how did you do it?
With 1.5 crore qualified workers, India has become a significant player, providing 40% of the world's freelance labor accessible globally, overtaking the United States, China, Brazil, and Japan as the fifth largest gig economy in the world. There are approximately 6 lakh gig workers in Karnataka alone. Gig work is completely different from the traditional nature of employment. The place of employment, the nature of work, the nature of allocation of the work, the employers are all different. The rules made for an earlier industrial 3.0 economy are quickly becoming irrelevant. How then do we address employee benefits and social security for this new industrial 4.0 era? Hello and welcome to OoruLabs podcast, and I'm your host Sathya Sankaran. In this episode, we speak with Alok Prasanna Kumar from Vidhi Legal, who has helped with the drafting of the Karnataka platform-based gig workers Social Security and Welfare Bill, which attempts to provision social security and welfare for gig workers in a technology-based aggregator economy. This conversation was recorded based on the draft bill put out for public consultation. And by the time this episode releases, a final bill may have passed in the assembly with some changes based on the many feedback sessions that were held before this draft and the final bill tabling in the assembly. I'll be linking the draft bill to the show notes for context. And if the bill made it to the act in the monsoon session before the airing of this episode, I will link the final bill as well. So let's jump in. Alok, thanks again for joining on the podcast.
My pleasure, Sathya.
So I recently heard about this Karnataka platform-based gig workers Social Security and Welfare Bill. Mm-hmm. You've been working on it. What is the need for this bill? Why do we need this bill?
First of all, thanks, Satya. I think it's been a while since I was on this podcast, and I always enjoy talking to you and listening to your podcasts. I think this particular bill, it comes at a very particular time in our economic history. This was brought home to me in a very interesting way. So if you recall, Rajasthan has passed a similar bill last year, 2023, right? And they kind of reached out to me to say, can you be part of this discussion with experts and organizers about how this bill should look like? So I said, okay. There, while we were going around discussing why this bill is needed, one labor organizer by the name of Sangam Tripathi, he is with the Indian Federation of App-Based Transport Workers, said, I think what is perhaps the most important thing any listener should keep in mind when they are thinking about this bill. Sangam, and he said this in Hindi, so I will paraphrase in English. Sangam said, listen, I've been a labor organizer. You've all been in the unions for the last 30, 40 years. We always had a Malik of some sort, an employer of some sort. We used to go to that Malik to say, change our times, give us more work, where is our bonus? Something or the other. We would negotiate, bargain, work out with the Malik because the Malik needed us, we needed the Malik. Today, your Malik is your phone. We lifted up this phone and showed. And that kind of most perfectly encapsulates why this bill is needed. Because our entire gamut of labor laws is based on the idea that there is one employer who hires one employee and they work in a given workplace. 100 years worth of labor law, not just in India, everywhere around the world, has come on the assumption there is one identifiable employee who works for one identifiable employer who works in one workplace. Everything is built on this foundation. The gig economy has taken away that foundation, right? I'm not immediately saying good or bad. We'll come to that in a bit. This is just a fact. I'm just stating the fact over here. Today, a gig worker might have the Zomato app on his phone or the Swiggy app on his phone. A gig worker who is driving around. Nowadays, they have 4 apps I've seen in Bangalore. They have Nambayatri, they have Uber, and they have Ola, and increasingly Rapido also. Somebody could be a delivery person for Amazon one day. They could be a delivery person for Flipkart the next. They could be working for Porter. There is no clear one-to-one correlation. On the flip side, it is also meant that the employer, right, is not exactly sure this is the only person this person is working only for me. So why should I do anything for them? Right? That's just a factual thing that I'm pointing out. The third thing which we often forget is that there is no defined workplace. Now, it may seem trivial, like, so what's the big deal? But think about all the measures relating to, let's say, your workplace safety, workman's compensation, even something as simple as how do unions form? I know who I'm working with. I know that person. I know where they live. We walk and talk with each other as we go into the assembly line and we go out. And that is what builds this bond of solidarity. That is what makes you form part of a union. As an individual, I may be one day standing outside Veena stores here in Malleshwaram. Next day, I might be standing outside Burma in Indranagar. Day after that, I might be somewhere in Whitefield. I don't know who are the other people I should look to and work with. And they have found ways to organize. So something about this gig economy. And it's not just no more a small sector of a few thousand or 10,000 people. Lakhs and lakhs of people just in Karnataka and tens of lakhs of people across India are now in this sector. And it's been around for more than 10 years now. People are like, this is good. This is a good source of livelihood. This is a flexible source of livelihood. But people will start worrying, right? What happens if something happens to me on the road? Who is responsible? What happens if, I suddenly fall ill and I can't earn a living? What happens if I am suddenly kicked out of the app? I don't know why. Who do I contact? Who do I get in touch? And this is the single biggest source. And our own involvement started about 3 or 4 years ago, I think during the pandemic, when gig workers were classified as essential workers. But we never gave we just said from the namesake, you're essential workers. But we never gave them the kind of protections that essential workers would need to be able to come back tomorrow and work. What would happen if they fell ill? What would happen if their families are affected in some way? What would happen in the future, going forward, if we want them to stay in this business, in this sector? So workers' unions started reaching out, saying, Social Security Code has been passed. What happens? Problem with Social Security Code is that it hasn't been brought into effect. It is just a legal concept. Parliament passing a bill does not automatically make it an enforceable law. Government says when it will become an enforceable law. This is a feature of all laws. It's not just the Social Security Code in specific. Government never said from which date we will bring Social Security Code into effect. Second thing is Social Security Code, if you honestly ask me, is still a creature from 10 years ago. right? It was formally passed in Parliament in 2020, but if you see the kind of provisions, if you see the kind of measures that it takes, it is thinking of the gig workers from 10 years ago. It is not fully understanding how the sector has matured, how it has changed, what are the concerns of workers, how it has evolved. So, in that sense, the Social Security Code, and this is where this discussion sort of started. How can we claim our rights under the Social Security Code? And my answer was you can't, because number one, the code isn't law yet. Number two, you don't have any particular rights as gig workers. There are provisions which say that the central government may frame some schemes for you, and these then there will be a board which will be set up, and the central government may collect some money from aggregators to fund these schemes. The key word here is may. None of this has happened, right? None of this has come into force. And we don't know when it will come into force. Governments have priorities, governments have various things. So workers were like, yeah, okay, so we thought we were getting something, but we haven't gotten anything out of this. The next step, therefore, was can state governments do something on this? Now let's keep in mind in India's constitutional scheme, labor and social security fall within the concurrent list, which means both the union and the state can pass laws on the same topic. And very importantly, unless it is impossible to comply with both the state and the union law, there is no problem if the state passes a law on exactly the same topic that the union has. So, in which case, I sort of kind of speaking to some of the unions and IFAT, and we held a consultation, we held this thing to say, yes, this is what the law should be. But there was one thing which the Social Security Code could not provide for because they didn't think about this, is that how do we kind of ensure that the worker is taken care of at the quote unquote workplace? For most workers, the workplace is their own two-wheeler, four-wheeler, three-wheeler. For an urban company person who's coming to your home as a plumber, as an electrician, as a masseuse, or a beautician, their workplace are other people's homes. How do we imagine a legal framework which accounts for this complexity? It wasn't there. Because, see, all of this cuts across four labor codes. As people may be aware, there were four labor, Social Security Code is one of four labor codes, right? Occupational Health and Safety, Wages Code, and the Industrial Relations Code. These are all an attempt to kind of make India's labor laws simpler and more unified and more structured. But the topics covered are kind of different. And gig workers aren't just saying, please give us some more social security. They want that. But now the concerns have widened. Now the concerns have widened and widened to say in the sense that they always felt this worry. Now they see law as a solution. What happens to us if we are kicked off the platform? What happens if we don't receive our money on time? What happens if something happens to us while we are on the road, right? They didn't find the answers to this in the law and they felt a new law is needed. This is one of those few examples that I like to say that for better or worse, this has been the impact of the Bharat Jodo Yatra because Sheikh Salahuddin, and this is on record, spoke to Rahul Gandhi on the Bharat Jodo Yatra. And about few months later, I think a month or so later, when he was in Alwar in Rajasthan, Rahul Gandhi announced Rajasthan government is going to pass this law. They may have been thinking about it. They may have had some clue about it. But the fact that here is one of India's leading gig worker union representatives, right? Sheikh Salahuddin, who's been called India's most powerful Uber driver, if you've read that article in Rest of World, he found a way to kind of tell him that this is not an issue for us of saying, oh, we are poor, please give us more. They're saying we are essential to how modern urban economy is functioning and nobody's thinking about us. In that way, we sort of saw that this resulted in that first version of the Rajasthan law. Subsequently, Karnataka did. And, we at Vidhi, we've kind of been thinking about this and writing about this and talking about this. And we felt Rajasthan is a good start, but it is not enough. So we have come out and put out a model draft law for gig workers, which any state can pick up and adopt and change. Some of that Karnataka has, while we were sort of reaching out to people in government to understand how they would like this law. The Labour Department said, oh, thank you, this is very helpful, and took a few of the provisions. So some of this, we have had some role in like the current draft of the of the Karnataka gig workers bill, which is where we got here, right? So this is a 3 or 4 year immediate history, but the longer history of it is the fact that the gig economy as we understand it has completely upended labor legislation. And it has changed it in a fundamental way, and it requires a new approach in the law to figure out how do we regulate this system.
Fair enough. I think that clearly, secondly, explains why
Hmm.
we needed this and the fact that there is an economy which is quite mature
Hmm.
and that the social protections there aren't definable how traditionally it has been done.
Hmm.
But let's just quickly look at what is this bill
Yeah.
trying to do. I
Yeah.
mean, why it is trying to do it is clear.
Hmm.
What are the different things it does?
So let's start with it broadly does three things, right? And I'll try and break down those three things. Number one, it sets up a board,
Okay.
right, which oversees this the disbursement of funds and social security and some other things. Second is the protection, the rights of the gig workers. It codifies certain rights of gig workers.
Okay.
And the third, it creates a fund for gig workers, and it provides a mechanism for funding this particular fund from contributions from the aggregators.
Okay.
All right. So I'll break this down one by one. Why is there a board? Now, this is why the platform gig economy is a new issue in labor law. It is not completely unique either. A lot of states have tried to evolve responses to the unorganized sector. Now, people who do daily wage work are also, in some ways, gig workers without the use of an app, without the kind of machinery around it. But they were perhaps more geographically concentrated. You can't exactly travel the entire length of city to.
Why don't you use that occasion to define the gig worker and the aggregator?
I'll just quickly come to that. So yeah, in that context, Maharashtra has this Mathadi workers bill, and what it did was it created a tripartite board. Who were Mathadi workers? They were headload workers. So if you have seen construction site, they would carry stuff and bring it there, and they would be paid on the basis of the work that they did, number of headloads they carried. But they would be in different workplaces in each time. So the solution which was found was that they will create a tripartite board: government, builders, and workers. So in the same way, you have government, aggregators, and gig workers sitting in one organization, saying we will administer this fund, we will register workers, we will oversee the distribution of their benefits and so on. Now, who is a gig worker? You ask me that question. I'll define both terms. The term platform is also defined, and the term gig worker is also defined. Now, both of these definitions are by and large taken from the Social Security Code. So, gig worker means a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement that results in a given rate of payment based on terms and conditions laid down in such contract, and includes all piece rate work, and whose work is sourced through a platform in the services specified in the schedule. First of, lawyers would sort of see that it has had to be defined as widely as possible. If you see labor law definition of who is an employee or a workman, this will not be similar to that at all, right? And the thing is, because new models in this area are coming up every single day, some leeway has been given to government to say, okay, we think this person is also working in a manner similar to gig work, and let us include this particular sector as well in the definition of gig work. So that is the large term that it uses is work arrangement, right? Work arrangement where you get paid for in a certain way from a platform for doing this work. What is a platform? Let me read that also. Means any arrangement providing a service through electronic means at the request of a recipient of the service, involving the organization of work performed by individuals at a certain location in return for payment, and involving the use of automated monitoring and decision making systems. This is an important element of it.
Why?
When like, we're not just talking about people who might work for one person one day, a platform the next day, somebody else a third day. We are very specifically talking about somebody who is working for a platform, and this platform is not just a place where look, Amazon is a platform for selling and buying of goods. Nobody, a shopkeeper doesn't get covered by this because he's not offering their work through the platform. They're offering goods through the platform. But Amazon, when they are sort of delivering that particular item that you bought in the last mile, will engage a contractor who will find somebody through an app and say, please deliver this to Alok's house. And you here, you get paid 20 rupees. At that stage, Amazon might be the platform because they may have provided the app, or that contractor may be using another specialized app. right? We get subcontracted out also. That is what makes the subcontractor or Amazon, depending on who's actually in control of that platform, they will become the platform for the purposes of this act. And that person who's coming to deliver that little product that you bought, that they are now a gig worker, right? So in that way, this is who the law believes is a gig worker. This is who the law believes is a platform, and this is how they get covered under this law.
If the technology was not involved,
Hmm.
let's say the maid who comes to my house is a
Yeah,
gig worker of sort without an aggregation,
yeah,
would they be covered? There seems to be some other categories here in the annexure about content and media services or healthcare. How did
yeah.
you come up with those?
Yeah. So in that context, if there is no technology intermediation, they're not covered by this act. Now, in the sense, these are all broad categories. Healthcare could say involve people who do blood tests, things like that, right? Content and media could be people who are engaged to edit something. True. Again, it's not like I am reaching. If when I reach out to an editor and say, please edit my podcast or my video, that's not covered by this. I may be reaching by them by email. But if I put out a request and Amazon, say, whichever platform it is, I forget which one it is, if they connect me to a person who is doing this service and the payment goes through the app, app takes a deduction, work comes through the app, they monitor the quality of this product. I can give them a rating to say this person has done a great job, 5 star, or this was terrible, 1 star. And as a result, they either turn up higher or lower on the app, or they are allowed to charge higher or charge lower on the app. Those are the kinds of things, right? Those are probably some at the moment, probably some of the smaller sectors in the gig economy, but that is who will fall within the definition of gig worker. They may be sitting at their own home, but they are doing this work. And for them, it may not be as hazardous as, say, a person who is delivering goods on Swiggy or Zomato. But for them, they also have the concerns about how much, am I making? Is it sustainable? Who do I claim as this thing? And so on and so forth. Who is not covered would be, say, a doctor on practo,
Mhm.
right? A doctor on practo is not getting work from the app. You're essentially kind of still employed with the hospital, or you have your own clinic. You are essentially being connected to, yes, people can rate you. People can sort of say yes or no, but they are essentially professionals who are doing whatever they were doing offline. It's just that they happen to come online to do this. So it's still, it's not as if Practo can decide whether you'll be a doctor or not, right? That is the National Medical Commission. So in that way, at the moment, in the way in which it is, so, and in any case, we haven't included health as in doctors yet. So in that way, they will not be covered. So yes, there will be a little bit of an overlap. There might be a little bit of a gray area, but by and large, those who are covered will be those in the transportation, in the personal services, in the delivery, in the e-commerce area, and so on. And there are a couple of other smaller areas where concerns have been raised. We don't know how many people will come forward and say, please register me. I am covered by this. Or how many platforms will say, yes, we would also include our workers on this. Please include them on that. And it's interesting, and the reason why is also because of the two other parts of the bill.
Mhm.
One part of the bill, which is identified the rights of gig workers.
Okay.
We identified their right to, sort of basically get their grievances redressed. That's, I think, the most important thing that workers want, because they want to have some human point of contact. They want to have a human point of contact who can tell them, this is why you've been kicked off, this is why your payment is delayed, this is why you got less money. Currently, there isn't. And that's the number one source of confusion. Uh, Very recently, a friend had to go to the offices of one of the main aggregator companies. I won't take the name. And she wasn't able to get any, and she was, as a rider, she had a complaint. She wasn't getting any response. So she went to their office, and there was like a security guard outside said, nobody's allowed in. You give me your details, you give me your number, we'll respond to you on WhatsApp. She's like, okay, and whatever, gave and went. And then she saw there's this long line of people in the gig worker side of things, where everyone is basically coming. The security guard is saying, not allowed inside. Give me your name, number, what your concern is. I'll take it down. And all of the platforms have put up a mechanism like this. We want to say that you should have a right to receive a response quickly. You should be able to challenge this in a court somewhere if you're unhappy. We're also putting in things in this bill which sort of talk about that there should be a contract in the first place, right? Because so many workers. Now, I wrote a piece in 2016-17 where a friend who had tracked down a copy of an Ola contract asked me to say, does this create a contract of employment? I looked at the contract and said, yes, it's a contract of employment because the terms and conditions were so detailed and provide for that. This is a contract of employment which, say, anybody who's working for a factory might get. But a lot of these companies don't do that. They have these shrink wrap contracts where if you say accept the terms and conditions, so assume that you have a contract and if you ask what have I agreed to, they'll say, I will let you know in some time. So a lot of workers don't even know what they've agreed to. And this will all be in dense legalese and English, which frankly you and I with our layers of education find it hard to understand. Where will a worker who's maybe a 10th or a 12th pass, or even if they have a basic degree, if they're not specialized, if they don't have institutional support extending this, they won't have it. Then with things like that we've provided for things like what this automated decision making system, right, which is an important thing, which I'm not sure too many people understand. Even workers aren't, because they feel the effects. They say there's something has to be done about it. It's even the companies, I think, don't fully understand what their algorithms do. All right, they know they've optimized for certain things, but if you ask them to explain why is it charging me 2.5 times what I usually paid, they'll say, I don't know. Maybe the algorithm, maybe the timing, maybe something. All right. Money is money. You can always compare and figure out a figure. Where it becomes an issue is if a worker suddenly finds that I've stopped getting rights. I'm on the app. I haven't been kicked out. I've stopped getting rights. Why is this happen? Right? We are not saying show them the whole code base of the algorithm and tell them to figure out. We are saying audit this so that you know why a certain outcome, what is the input which resulted in this outcome, right? What is it that, was it an error? Was it justified? Was it not justified? Was it something that the worker did wrong? Was it something that your algorithm did wrong? You should be able to explain, because this is the number one issue that a lot of workers face, right? They, again and again, they'll say, okay, fine, schemes are all very good for me. I know I'm very happy with that. It's all good. But this is their biggest source of anxiety and worry on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Because they believe it's effectively like firing them.
Yeah.
It's effectively soft firing them or actually firing them. So things like this, right? And I'm giving 2 or 3 examples. We've also said there should be fair contracts which protect certain kinds of certain minimum terms the government will kind of frame. We haven't gone into this in this particular act because it will need to be tailored for different sectors. All it is saying is there will be fair contracts which ensure that there is equity between the parties. So these are some of the rights that are provided. These are obligations which have been placed on aggregators. Finally comes the fund and the welfare fee.
Of course, algorithms are going to rule the roost, and half of the people on the AI side don't know why it is happening.
Yeah.
And sometimes you may not even be able to explain. And if that is a constraint to be able to do that, there must be some other way of outcome-based measurement that even if the algorithm decided something, if it is not fair, you can correct it outside the algorithm or some such thing.
Yes.
I don't know how to account for this. Let's say I was a content provider and I get on an aggregator platform, kind of like the doctor, but I just chose, I'm doing some things, but I'm additionally providing my services through some kind of a Fiverr or something. Let's say I'm a coder and I'm registering on that. Unless that agency thinks I am eligible and is registered in this under this act with this board, I am not going to be able to get those benefits.
Exactly.
Right?
That's right. Yes.
And in which case, even though I may want the benefits of the social security that is there, I have no way of asking, hey, I have registered there, but they are not on it. So I have to deregister myself and not go to these platforms which don't offer these services.
No, not necessarily. Okay, just to clarify, not necessarily, because a gig worker also has a right to be registered. Now, we have put this as a right to register. There is still a lot more specifics and details to be worked out to address the specific kind of situation that you pointed out. What we have, just to clarify the registration process, it's actually 3 things. Number 1, the platform has to be registered. Platform should come forward and say, I will register myself. Number 2, the worker also has to get registered, right? Now, the one great advantage that technology provides in this sector is that already the details are available with all the platforms. So if we catch hold of a platform, let's say if the government catches hold of a Uber and says, give us the details of the people who are driving on your app, right? When I say give, I mean to say that it's going to be populated in a database that is also provided for in this law, the same central tracking serves. Provide an access to that database. We're not going to ask for personal details of users. We're not going to ask for the any past monetary transactions that they made. We just want names, let's say Aadhaar numbers, let's say address. That's it. That's really all you need to register, right? And each worker will get a unique ID. So let's say somebody has driven for both Uber and Ola, and they have used the same Aadhaar or the same driving license. They'll automatically be deduplicated that, right? So you give them a unique ID if you think that this person, if say you get the data from Uber first, and you find that, oh yeah, this person has already been on Uber, so already is automatically registered. The board has given them a unique ID. You don't need to give them a separate unique ID because they drove for Ola. Or if they decided at some point in the middle, I want to deliver food or packages, something like that, that doesn't get affected. So they come into the net as well. Separately, we have provided then the bill that somebody who wants to come forward and register themselves, they can do so. And they should fall within the definition of gig worker under this bill, even if they don't have an identified platform that they're working on. Afterwards, you may tell the platform, you please come and register because we need to collect the fund from you. We need to know how much this worker has worked, what transactions that they've taken place. You can get them registered. There'll be a process which is again subject to what will be come out in the rules. There'll be a process which government will say issue notice and say register yourself under this, or else this will be an offense under this act, and so on. But a gig worker can also come forward and register themselves and get a unique ID in this process. So again, Act will only deal with the very broad rights and the processes. The nitty-gritties will happen once the Act is passed and the rules are notified under this Act to say deal with things like registration. But per se, it doesn't. As a gig worker, you're not entirely dependent on the platform registering you as a gig worker on the government's website or database.
But if I were registered on one, I just decided to register on one platform, I'm not getting any work from them, or I'm not doing any work, so I registered in 5 more.
Yeah.
And I may or may not get random bits of work that is there. Now, some of the platform might be giving me more work than the others. And the others, if I wore the platform's hat and I had a non-performing or non-useful person, do I still end up paying for a random user who just registered, like having a registration and say, let me try my luck in 15 different platforms?
Sure.
Are all the 15 different platforms paying for me as a contribution?
Okay. So now we come to the fund and the welfare fee. So there is a fund which is created, which is going to provide the basic money. And that money is not only on the basis of what the aggregators pay. It includes, say, something, it'll start off probably with a corpus from the government. There will be periodic payments. Maybe the central government will contribute to this fund. The idea is if anybody wants to add CSR out of the goodness of the heart, please add to this fund. The fund is there. The intention is this fund will by and large be funded by the welfare fee. Now, what is the welfare fee? I'll tell you first what the Act says and what it should be. The Social Security Code says that central government, this is a Social Security Code, not the gig workers bill.
The India one.
The national one. Says that central government may levy a fee of up between 1 to 2% of the platform's turnover. All right? That isn't enforced, but that's what the law provides for. Let's just note that once. The Karnataka law says it may either be a transaction fee on some percentage of each transaction, or it may be based on turnover. The third is what I think it should be, and this we have made as a public suggestion to the government along with a group of other organizations and bodies and experts. It has to be a transaction fee. All right. Why? I'll explain. First, central government hasn't brought its turnover provision into effect, so there is no way of funding this, and the money will go to the central government. That's fine. State government will still have obligations under this act. State government has to find a way of providing for this. State government has, in the version of the bill put it in the public, given itself both options. To me, one option is workable, one option is impossible to implement. The term turnover, right, is something which is not a commonly accepted simple definition. Right? Those of us who have done tax law, those of us who have kind of practiced in this will know that it's not simple. There are many, many different definitions of turnover. It depends on who can afford the best CAs, the best lawyers, the best consulting firms around the world who can tell you what your turnover is. You go to the government fights with you. Now, for the central government, this makes sense because they'll have access to the tax data, right? You may know the annual turnover of an Uber India or whatever, and so on. But there is a wrinkle there also. The wrinkle is not a, just because Uber operates in India, it doesn't necessarily mean Uber India, the entity, is where the money goes. Uber India may just be an office to coordinate with the government, reach out to government, and do some small publicity. The money may be going to an Uber Netherlands, let's say, since that's the jurisdiction of choice. Now, how are you going to calculate turnover? Uber Netherlands may say, we don't segregate by country. We don't segregate by state. It's a challenge with the Social Security Code, but because it hasn't been brought into effect, we don't know how that will play out. But if at all anybody could ask, the government of India can write to an Uber, and we know government of India has all these long-running tax battles with big multinationals. Maybe one more thing they want to fight, good for them. State government doesn't have that machinery. State government does not have that kind of machinery to be able to look at the entire results of a corporate and say, this is my share, give me some part. It is simply impossible. Even if you put it in the terms turnover, you'll have to accept whatever our platform says, this is our turnover, take this much money, be happy. It may be too little, maybe not appropriate, it may be the wrong thing. There is no way the state can contradict. There is no way the state will know. It will not have the enforcement mechanism to make sure that they are actually paying the right amount. All right. And it may only come quarterly. It may not even come fully segregated. There are challenges to it.
Right.
Implementation challenges to it. Transaction fee. Okay, so that's a negative why turnover shouldn't be used. Transaction fee, there are two positive arguments. Number one, if at any point of time you have ordered anything from a platform, you will get an invoice, a tax invoice. Every single transaction. Those of you listening to this can open up your favorite app, the most recent transaction. Go to that page with your orders. There is a tax invoice given. For what? GST. And you will see a clean breakup, right? Like whether it is rent that you have taken, what is the amount that you have paid, what GST you have paid to the center, what GST you have paid to the state, right? Whether it's 18% or 5%, there is a clean breakup per state. And what part of the transaction is being subject to GST is easily broken up and the total given. All that platforms are required to do is add one more column to this. Welfare fee, right? Paid to state government. So the machinery is there already for implementation. State already knows the number of transactions that are taking place. State has GST data to say if a certain number of transactions are taking place on this platform, this much GST is being paid. So some ratio of that has to come to me as a welfare fee, right? It may be 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 rupees. The second thing is, who is the beneficiary of the platform economy at the end of the day? You and me, right? We are the ones using it. This doesn't exist for its own. It doesn't even perhaps exist for the VC's payout at the end of the day. It exists because we benefit from it. We, the end users, right? We are calling an Uber. It makes our life easier. We are ordering from Swiggy, Zomato. It's making our life easier. We are calling someone from urban companies, making our life easier. We should contribute to this. Who at the end of the day is providing these services? It's not the app magically bringing things to our house. There's a human being at the end of the day who is risking their life and limb and whatever, bringing that stuff. And why should it be left to discretionary tips? It should be a proper mechanism where they know I'm getting so much, I'm entitled to this. This government and society is protecting me for doing this important work. So a transaction brings you and me into the mix. Now, a platform may, out of the generosity of its heart, may say, no, we will only cover this. That's great, good for you guys. But personally, the way in which the transaction fee works, it brings you and me into the network of supporting the gig work. It's not just between, yes, it also fits within the tripartite board idea that the platform which benefits contributes some part to the board to fund the worker, to make sure they're able to come back to work the next day and so on and so forth. But it is going to take that fee from us. And that's not a bad thing because we are the eventual beneficiaries of this and we should be willing to contribute in something. So this is where I personally feel, and we have said this also for these reasons, that you have to go by the transaction fee method. Now, there is some debate about what is a transaction. All right.
Mm.
In, let's say, in taxi delivery, in a taxi situation where it's in where Uber or Ola, you pay X amount to the taxi,
Mm.
they take a commission, they give some to the rider, right?
Yeah.
Now, some people want the welfare fee to be on the entire value of what you and I pay to the taxi. Some people would prefer if it is just the amount that the worker gets
Mm.
minus the commission. And it's a worthwhile debate because you don't want to create a perverse incentive for the platform to try and reduce the worker take in some way or cut it from the worker's take and say, for their own good, what happens if they get a little bit less per transaction, right? So and there's a reasonable debate. I think there are views on this front and it needs to be worked out. Then there are also sector specific.
Mm.
So with
Yeah.
the cab, it's very clear, right? There's only between me and the cab driver. But with let's say a food delivery, let's say a Zomato or a Swiggy, one amount goes to the restaurant. When I pay, say, let's say when I pay Zomato or Swiggy, one amount goes to the restaurant, one amount goes to the worker, and one amount Swiggy or Zomato keeps. Now, here, the amount that goes to the worker is a very small percentage of the total transaction. If we are ordering, say, 500 rupees of food, majority of it is going to the restaurant. Some small part is going to the worker, and some other small part is going to the platform. It may be that you need a different way of calculating what is the transaction rate here. Third concern, which is also something which, so we are proposing government should kind of have a little bit more leeway on this front, is that the business models are changing.
Mm.
And I'm specifically going to mention Namayatri.
Mm.
And because Namayatri has worked, we are seeing even Rapido take up this subscription-based model. I think Uber and Ola are also thinking about a subscription-based model, and it's only a matter of time before others see the benefit of it. Now, I don't have a problem with subscription model. I don't think it's illegal or unlawful or bad. I think it's great. I think what Namayatri has done is a very interesting innovation which has appended this whole gig economy. Not to take away the underlying problems with it, but it has created a new way which workers feel happy about. Now, if you ask most auto and taxi drivers in Bangalore, and I tend to use, and they say this is so much simpler because you pay us directly. We know instantly how much money is coming to us. At the end of the day, I can just start it up and I know I get X. There's no question of commission. And I know it is clean. If I have to pay 30, 40, 50 bucks to the platform a day, it's easier for me to assess. Okay, I get X rides for X rupees and I'm done and I pay. Workers have said this in public, it has been said this, and even platforms may see this is a better way to do it. But here comes the question, then how will the welfare fee be collected? Right? You don't want a particular model which, say, the workers also like to end up working against them, which means like when issues come up with, say, social security or accident compensation, there's no money to pay them. That shouldn't happen. So in that sense, we have given a little bit of, or at least we have suggested a little bit of wide language, which might take into account even, say, these kinds of subscription-based models. So in that way, you would want the welfare fund to be funded out of transactions. Number one, because it's actually enforceable by the state government. It's actually easy to collect and keep track of. And the bill also proposes the mechanism where you share monthly transaction details. So if a platform were to say that, yes, X number of transactions have taken place, see, there is another much larger benefit to this. You can fine tune the policies. So you can fine tune the schemes. You might want to say, and I'm just giving an example, not that this is something immediately being said. A rider who has done 1,000 trips will be entitled to, say, 100% of this social security scheme. But somebody who has just logged into the app, right, won't be entitled to it because the demand might be work for at least 6 months or complete at least, say, 1,000 transactions or something like that. Maybe if you have done 500, you will be entitled to 50%. Likewise, it may sort of want to fine tune that. Okay, if you have been a gig worker for X number of years, this scheme will be available to you. Why? Because it knows approximately what is your age. You'll be approaching retirement. You might have to worry about children's fund. You might have even in regular labor law. It's not as if on day one every single social security scheme applies to you. There is a gradation to it. Like with PF, you're allowed to withdraw after a certain number of years, certain percentage. Whereas with the employer, with an employer, the employer has details of when you started work, when you stopped work, and it's every day you go to work. With the gig worker, it's not necessarily so. And this data will be needed from the platforms to say to fine tune these schemes to say a person who's worked so much will be entitled to this scheme. A person who works more will get a better scheme. Maybe a person who's just started will not get that much of the scheme, and so on and so forth. So, to answer your question, if you register yourself on day one, you are now a registered gig worker. Supposing on day one something horrible happens and you suffer an accident, you'll still be entitled to accident compensation. Let's say there's an accident compensation scheme. Not to say that there is nothing in the law at present. There is the Motor Vehicles Act and there is the Workmen's Compensation Act. But both of you, those require you to go to court. Government may say, boss, this person was barely making minimum wages. Who will go to court saying, please give us so much money? Who will fight a legal battle? If you're a registered gig worker and you were logged into the app, and this is a scheme which the government might come up with, it's not there yet. Government might say, if you're a registered gig worker, when you log into the app, if you suffer some accident, immediate payment will come to you within 2 weeks or 4 weeks and so on. As basic enquiry is done, you'll get money. But government may say, we're creating a provident fund for workers where you'll be allowed to withdraw 10,000 if you have done 100 rides. You'll be allowed to withdraw 50,000 if you have done 500 rides, and so on. Or government might say, here is an insurance scheme, right, where the amount that gets paid off to you for your health insurance depends on how long you've been working. So somebody who's enrolled on day one will not be entitled to a payout from this insurance scheme. Let's say it's a health insurance scheme. If he makes a claim, you should have contributed, right, X number of rides, X number of things. That corpus should have been built up, and then you'll be entitled to access it on whatever day 1,000 because you've done so many. So you can fine tune these schemes. You can fine tune all of this, but it's not as if, like I said, right, there are some things which you should get on day one, but there are some things which will come to you over a period of time the longer you have been on it. And again, it'll also depend on the future shape of the schemes. They might look at historical data also. They might say somebody who has already been a gig worker for 7, 8, 10 years, why should we now put them as the same? Let's say this act comes into force on 1st September 2024, right? All the platforms have historical data of who has been a gig worker with them for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, right? Government could say, yes, people who have been will get priority in some of the schemes over somebody who joins on 2nd September 2024, right? We're not going to treat everyone as being eligible from 1st September 2024. We look at your historical service, so to speak, and it allows for that fine-tuning. That space has been created. How it will be done, it will depend on specific schemes that the government frames. How it will be done on the basis of whatever technology, whatever data is collected from the platforms and so on and so forth. And that is why it's important to have the platforms also at the table in this board. They should be able to say, you're creating perverse incentives for us, or we might cause this problem for workers. You might cause that problem on our platform. We may not be able to give this data. We may not be able to give that data. That's fine. It's all valid objections, but it shouldn't be that it becomes an endless litigation battle between government and platform to say, do this, don't do this, this is illegal, this is unconstitutional, and so on and so forth.
The disbursement question is well answered, which is there could be schemes that are arrived upon, and the act basically says the board will come up with whatever it takes to determine how the disbursement need to happen, what it needs to happen. So it leaves that completely open-ended. However, collections and filings are definitely something that have been defined, saying that you have to file quarterly.
Yes.
It has to be deposited, right? GST at least is far more smoother process with my auditor doing it, whereas the tax collection officers at the state level are like pulling teeth. There's a lot of the old ways of working still there. It's just a pain. Filing issues are going to start putting a spoke in a small entrepreneur's wheel. Let's say I start an aggregation platform for podcasters, for example, and I have 10 people, 100 people, and not too many transactions, but yet I end up doing this paperwork right up front. How is this corpus going to look like in the beginning? Who are going to, is there, for example, there is a difference between a gig worker and a contractor. That's and right. An employee.
Yes.
And you already know as an employee, you can put it in PF and, things like that. But whereas a gig worker in multiple places, the place of work is not defined and all that. How does the social security even collect for this person? And what is the quantum looking like right now in that fund? Where even if you start collecting and everybody existing comes on board, what does that quantum look like, and how can we make it easier for entrepreneurs to file and not make this a chore right up front? I think that seems to be the concern. There are unintended consequences of the paperwork, which we are already suffering from.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, and I think this is something to be figured out in rules. Number one, the corpus, how much it'll start initially, I think it'll depend on how quickly the data comes from the aggregators. And this is where, I mean, I've been part of consultations where people in the government had said, can you give us a back of the envelope figure how many transactions take place? And we've seen a lot of aggregators be a little cagey about it, saying maybe this much, maybe that much. And the government like, give us the data so we know. Because the fact is, fundamentally, this data is sitting with the aggregators. Right? However, there is also the fact that this is all digital. It's not registers that you have to maintain physically, which you had to under older legislation. This is all databases which are sitting there in each aggregator. What we have tried to create with this central managing system, right, CTIMS, which is provided for in this act, is that your process of registration becomes smooth. Now, GST also had a lot of teething troubles, you'll recall, between 2016 to 20. A lot of people complained, a lot of changes had to take place. Small companies had to shut down, they couldn't manage it, and so on. The vision that informs this bill is that this data will essentially be pulled by this central monitoring system from the aggregator. They just need to give access to APIs or whatever, which will pull this data every month. All you just need to do is make sure that you're not tampering with the database at your end. That's it. I would still say that Karnataka is perhaps best placed among states in India to implement this. And I say this not just because I'm here, but the Karnataka government has had a long history of working with tech companies to build such products, to build such services. It knows the technical capabilities. It can access talent, most importantly, which I think not a lot of states can do on day one. Right? They may take some time. They may need to get some vendors. They may need to get people onboarded as consultants and so on to help build the system. But I think Karnataka is already in a good place. Property tax, for instance, I pay every year. It takes me 2 minutes in total, which accounts for some slight delay at the server end for confirmation that money has come in. From the point of me putting in my flats RR number that they say to when the transaction is exactly 2 minutes. All right?
You should try professional tax.
Which is what I outsource to my accountant. I know exactly what you do. It's there and it's uneven. I fully agree. It is uneven in a lot of ways. Professional tax is a pain. That it may take some time to mature likewise. Karnataka has rolled out the 5 guarantees in the last 1 year. A lot of it has been due to the fact that there is a database called Kutumba, which has a lot of residents data. I won't say citizens because not every Indian citizen is covered there. It's whoever is living in Karnataka at a given point of time who has availed some sort of government scheme, and it is there. And the database helps the government identify who should be a beneficiary, who shouldn't. It has details of 6.5, 7 crore people last I heard. So this is only a fraction of this will be the database for gig workers, right? And every day, like for instance, whoever is availing, availing a particular scheme, that data gets fed back to the Kutumba database to say that this person who was availing the scheme has stopped availing or has deregistered themselves for various reasons. The database is cleaned up, the beneficiaries change, and the government sort of knows, okay, this person, this family, actually not individual, this family, somebody has this amount of land, they had access to this scholarship, they avail of this free rice scheme, and so on and so forth. So the machinery is there, all right, and the number of gig workers in Karnataka might be again subject to how much data comes through, not more than 5 lakhs. All right. That's still a sizable number. And when you say Karnataka, most of them will probably be in Bangalore. So let's say 5 lakhs, right? Let's say 5 lakh beneficiaries. That is still a small fraction of what the Karnataka government has in its Kutumba database. Even if we say monthly updating of their numbers, it's still perhaps a much smaller number, and people with the more technical expertise can give more details and corrections on how this can be built and how it can be done, and that will be done over a period of time. So the capability for the government to do this is not that much of a challenge. Internally, they're clear about it. They also want to, and the reason why they're talking about technology is because at the other end of it, on the platforms, they already have these databases. They already know. It's about making sure that they're given access to it, or just the parts of it which are necessary to make this thing happen and make it real. That is what is going to make it work. So in the sense of what about, let's say, a small company, right? The smallest thing. Now, there is a minimum threshold of at least 50 gig workers. So if you have 10, 20, 30,
I didn't
40,
see that.
will not be. Yeah, there is a minimum threshold of 50 gig workers. Now, this is something which is I'll just have to confirm this because that number may have changed from
Hmm.
what I
Fair enough.
recall. Here we go. Nomination of not point of contact. It was one of the provisions which had said that there should be a minimum threshold, a number of gig workers. So again, the point of it being there are certain general obligations you should be covered by, but the idea of it, and this is where more of it will come out, and this is where it's kind of important for public to be part of this process. Don't just treat this as between gig workers and platforms. When the government say puts out draft rules, people like what you just mentioned, the Satya should people should come forth and say, hey, will I be covered by this? I plan to start this new
Yeah.
entity. I don't. I mean, I would like to be covered by this at a much later point of time, not today. Can your rules account for the fact that a really small company like mine cannot provide for all of this, or we don't have the infrastructure yet to provide for all of this? In which case, the government will find a way to create certain thresholds, like say 50 or 100 or whatever else as the case may be. So, to that extent, I think the specific concern will come at a slightly later point of time once the rules are to be framed for implementation. But the fundamental principles which you how you deal with the gig worker, those will come into effect immediately, right? Something as simple as explain the contract to them in simple to understand language. Why should it depend on how many workers you have? Every person who gets onto your platform should know I am entitled to this. I will get work in this way. If I do this, I'll be kicked off. If I'm unhappy with something, this is who I will speak to, right? And if I'm unhappy, I can go to the government or whatever. Just 6 7 basic points. If of course, some of it may simply not be applicable because of the nature of the work.
Hmm.
So, in that way, this is, I think, something which will still be left to the
Fair enough.
implementation details. This is also, and to be quite honest about this is also something that not just Karnataka but worldwide governments are grappling.
It goes back to what you said in the beginning about how
Yeah,
fractured your gig worker is among the you can work for 15 different companies
exactly.
whose HR are, I mean, do all of the medical insurance under my group for them? Do I get 15 different group insurance?
Mm.
Do I get 15 different HR benefits?
Yeah,
How is this going to work, right? So if you're consolidating and this becomes a quasi HR of
yeah,
some kind where
yeah.
you kind of like covered UBI in a certain way, which is all the benefits are covered, you just go do the work, and based on how much
Yes.
work you do, you're
Mm.
getting covered on maybe insurance, this, that. So are we creating a kind of a outsourced HR and part
Yeah,
UBI of some sort?
correct. In a way, which is why this is not called a welfare tax; it's called a welfare fee.
Hmm.
Because it's not just the gig worker benefiting from it, it is the company also benefiting
But a fee has a different connotation because
from
there
it.
is a service rendered to
Exactly,
that
exactly.
and
Yeah,
not just
so
go for equalization.
exactly. In the context of law, that service doesn't have to be exactly one to one. That service can be, are you benefiting from this in some way, in some readily tangible way that say somebody who's not paying the fee will not really benefit from? And which is that, yes, your worker will be more confident. Like exactly what you just said, right? What if instead of you as the platform trying to figure out which worker I should provide these 200 things for, government is saying, don't worry, we're taking that responsibility. All we want you to do is pay for this, give us the details, we'll ensure that this amount reaches because our scheme will be administered by us and you're part of the manner in which the scheme is being administered because you're sitting on the board. So in that way, that's a great way to put it. A lot of things that you as the company are trying to break your head and figure out who I should provide these things for. And again, I'm assuming good faith companies want to do things for their good gig workers. Government is saying, don't worry about that. We'll have the data on. We'll consolidate the data. We'll consolidate the schemes. It'll be more efficient for us to provide a scheme for 5 lakh gig workers than you to provide for 50,000 gig workers. Because, if you have dealt with insurance companies, they kind of prefer much larger groups than smaller groups because it allows them to generalize the data. We'll be able to aggregate data across platforms. We'll know how many workers that actually need this, how many workers will benefit from this, and so on. So in some, and this is just the schemes that are based on the legislation that's already there. Some a new scheme might come up based on the demand of workers, based on the demands of platforms, which address a need you and I aren't able to think of today in our discussion. And the point is, it's not as if you have to get into this endless competitive battle to figure out how to retain your gig workers. Once a certain standard of social security protection is provided, right? Somebody who enters this field is confident that I am going to be protected in this field. They don't feel the constant anxiety of should I go with Uber, should I go with Ola, should I go with this, should I go with that. Who will you can tailor the quality of your service to that you're providing purely to the gig worker and to the customer. And at the end of the day, this is something that you can pay to the government to do, right? So in that way, this is the service that is also being provided in some way by the government to the gig worker and also to the platform to say we are not saying that all of you are fundamentally doing bad things and are evil and should be shut down. It's a new part of the economy and it has created new challenges which our laws are unable to deal with. And we are finding a new way to incorporate all this. I mean, this whole idea of labor laws has a very fascinating history. And in fact, when the first labor laws came into force, unions were opposed to it. Unions said, yeah, because they had a very bad experience, the government interfering in favor of the employers in all these matters. And they felt, no, we will bargain. We will hold our strikes. We will hold our negotiations. We will find a way to make a deal with the employer which will work out best for us. You don't tell us what should be this thing. But the law created certain minimum thresholds that, the factory should recognize a union, that there should be a hearing before you remove a worker, that you have to make these contributions. Because a lot of things we take for granted, everything as simple as a 5-day work week, was the result of a union agitation or a labor agitation sometime in the 19th century. 8 hours of work, something we take for granted, was a result of the agitation by unions because the industrial revolution changed the way which work took place. Today we take it for granted. We take it for granted like the air we breathe and the water we drink. But this was a new innovation in society which governments, people, and entities themselves had to grapple with. How do we regulate? Today we are seeing that new innovation in the form of the platform economy. And it's a result of technology maturing to a certain way. It's a result of the economy maturing to a certain way. If we didn't have smartphones, we wouldn't have the platform economy. Let's be very clear about that, right? Maybe Steve Jobs probably didn't have this in mind that I'm actually enabling the creation of this platform economy when I launched the iPhone in some ways. So we have to sort of grapple with the changes that take place as a result of changes in economy, society, and technology. And this is a way to respond to those kinds of changes. Just as 19th century, early 20th century, governments had to respond to the rise of the industrial revolution and how unions were organizing in the labor.
The fear is only two things. The unintended consequences for businesses is, if I paid the fees, are you as a government or a board willing to take care of that and not throw it back on my head saying that you paid the fees, but you still need to deal with all these things, right? If you live up to your end of the contract saying that we paid the fees, you take care of this thing and don't make it really like pulling teeth for filing things. Make it automated, like how we can just have the auditor file it. You don't have to make the visits to the office, things like that. Second thing is also that the duplication. Now everybody between the labor laws and the social security thing, the code on social security. What is the guarantee since it's a concurrent list? Typically, I think if you have a bill that's at the central level and the state takes precedent until there is a bill at the center which does the same thing.
Yes.
Will all the systems go to naught if there is or will there be a double levy that is being asked? Is that there might be contributions there, like the SGST and CGST, there might be contributions there and here as well. And that's the fear, right? Right now, you're clarifying that it is not there, but there might be in the future. How will this evolve if that happens?
My sense is central government will see how Rajasthan, Karnataka, Telangana, Maharashtra, Haryana, Jharkhand are working their laws, and they will change the social security code accordingly.
Because not do the double levy.
Yes, because this is something which I've sort of realized. I don't think the central government fully has understood the need of the gig economy at the moment, or rather, let's say at the moment when the Social Security Code came into force. All right, they gave themselves very broad powers to bring this into effect. The fact that they haven't, while bringing other parts into effect, tells me they haven't fully understood what we're supposed to be doing here, and that's part of that reason is structure. Central government, we see this as this massive giant entity, but if you take out the income tax department, it's actually not available across the country. All it does is provide certain services. Sure, there is a post office here, there is a railway. It's not the governance machinery of the central government. So if a, and there is of course some labor office here, there, and everywhere, where the issue is very pointed for state governments. 5 lakh, let's say 5 lakh gig workers in Karnataka is 25 lakh people because their families are also affected. 2.5 million people. That's a sizable number that a state with 7 crore people has to think about. There will be whole states where it's not such a big number, right? Or maybe Bihar doesn't have enough urban agglomerations to benefit from this. Maybe in UP it is too concentrated in Noida and Lucknow or Kanpur to really seem as a big enough issue. Maybe in a state which is largely rural like Jharkhand or West Bengal, they may not see this as an immediate concern, or at least creating a legal framework is immediate concern. So the national government is thinking, who is this for? Because they don't see that person, right? A Delhi state government may say, this is for exactly these people. We want to do something. A national government sees an issue in a very different way, right? And this is, we don't have too much time to go, but governments see issues in very different ways. And it has to do with how governments function, they're structured, what are the political incentives, and how accessible a government is to the people. But the union government, perhaps you can conduct all the studies. You can conduct all the studies and consultations that you want to. Unless you frame it in a particular political manner, you will not act on that issue. It'll be some nice to do on some bureaucrat's list at some point of time, but it will not have that pressing political need that you see this particular thing fulfills. When states start to implement this, and there will be challenges, you have pointed out several, I'm 100% sure none of this will have a 100% solution. Union government will realize, oh, okay, so this is the national issue. But maybe I, as the union government, don't want to bother myself with creating a huge fund.
Correct.
Which I will have to administer, which I will have to collect, which I will have to chase upon. If states are doing the collection themselves, if states are funding this, I may just say, I will give you X percentage of that fund's money. You administer it, you register it, you take care of all of the specific details. I will not bother with the trying to collect the fund myself. Because all of this has cost for the government, right? And what is the benefit that they're sort of seeing? Gig workers are both dispersed across the country and heavily concentrated in some parts.
Yeah.
Right? You may not want to invest in a machinery that tries to reach out to every gig worker in the country from day one. It may just be too difficult, too challenging. And this is what has also happened in the past. Tamil Nadu and Kerala pioneered building workers legislations. Central government enacted it much later. Right? And not just in the field of labor legislations. The example that I like to give to everyone is that in the 1970s, Kerala made Hindu law of succession gender equal. They said daughters will get as much as sons. I mean, they did it in a slightly complicated way, unique to Kerala, but they said daughters and sons will get equal shares in the property, of ancestral property. In succession, a few years in the next decade, in the 80s, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, undivided Andhra Pradesh, all passed more or less identical laws amending the Hindu succession law in the 80s and the 90s to say daughters and sons will get equal shares in ancestral property. In 2005, union government realized, okay, there is a serious demand for this. This is what should be done. And they passed a law, which is today the nationwide legislation. It is better than all the state legislation, if you ask me, comparatively. It has taken a lot of time to see the changes on the ground, and it will take a lot of time to see the changes that was imagined on the ground. Fundamentally, lawmaking in India is not union passes a law and states find a way to implement it. A lot of times, it's the states which are innovators in lawmaking. States which say, we think this is how it should be done, and the union government takes its cue. And so the union government, I am pretty sure that if they see this is actually working well, why do we need to try and intervene to create some new mechanism? Why do we want to replace this mechanism which is already working? We will just find a way to supplement it instead of causing more confusion, instead of trying to create an entire machinery across different states for something which may not have as much benefit for us making the effort. They might say, it's fine. I think go ahead. We will just happily contribute to it and say state government will administer the fund. Money for this is being given by the union government. So this is a possibility. The question of a double levy, I feel, can be pushed back on by the aggregators themselves, because If you simply point out we are already paying X to the state government, no levy is being made by the union government. The union government hasn't framed a scheme. There is no mechanism currently where the union government is collecting money from the aggregators. When they frame a scheme, they'll usually put out a draft scheme. Let aggregators come out and say, whatever we're paying for Karnataka, deduct that from whatever we're supposed to pay you for under this scheme, right? That'll be perfectly acceptable. There is, it'll always be perfectly acceptable. And again, this is not a tax so much as to say that this is just a fee that you're paying at the end of the day. So, which is where I think this is not once, and I'm sure the Karnataka bill will get passed in this monsoon session. I know that at least 2 or 3 other states are working on a similar version of the bill. Maybe by the end of the year or early next year, they may have also passed their legislation that may be already in force and being implemented. We don't know what the union government is thinking on this. We don't even know if they've put out a draft scheme, how it will be funded, how they will collect, right? Again, they may say we will pay out of our own union government funds for this whole thing. We don't want any money from aggregators. That is also possible because, like I said, like I read out right at the start, the key word in the social security legislation is may. You may frame a scheme, you may create a board, you may collect some of these money. None of this is essential to the way in which that works because it was imagined in a very different context. Even from the time in the last 1 decade, we have seen the platform economy change quite fundamentally, undergo a lot of transformation. Maybe government might want to rethink how that social security code works in the context of gig workers. Learn from the experience of the states and change that by itself.
So the variance in that is what I think bothers people is the Code of Social Security says use the PF because that already exists. It has a way of functioning and it does certain things. Use the PF as a way of delivering these things. But of course, the PF only is a repository for later with just a loan option, whereas these schemes might include medical insurance and other things, and then the ministry is coming. But let's say the states put this up differently. Here, there's a transaction tax here. Somewhere else, they grapple with revenue and make a mistake. The aggregators sometimes are national. That's the way scale works. And like you said, they are not in every city. They are in maybe top 20, top 30 cities because the cluster effect is important for it to succeed, right? You can't be in a small city delivering 2 chips packets in a day. Right. So when you look at this top 20 cities, the center might, like you said, it doesn't interest us to just solve these problems. But even if they end up doing it, is easier for someone to work on an existing system rather than file 5, 6, 10 different types. But what you're saying is powerful because that's the true thing of decentralization. You don't want to go the other way. You want the states to be able to handle these things. That's for both of us wishful thinking. But the only thing is, how do we prevent? I mean, we can't prevent if the bill does come in and say, okay, you have to add another additional 2% into the PF funds from your side. Hey, the whole point of the reason of the bill being an outsourced HR, so we don't have to worry about the multiplicity, duplicity, and all that. If you begin to apply the same principles of employment to this, because it's called employee provident fund, not a gig worker provident fund.
Exactly.
Right. And the way the gig worker works is totally different from, like you mentioned in the beginning when you set the stage. So there are these complications I'm still grappling with. I don't know how many of these. As a last question, where do you see this? It is going to be probably tabled this week. There are people, the IAMA, for example, asking for more time. But I don't know if time will solve it rather than getting clarity on collections and disbursements. If you're going to live up to your term of collecting this money and taking care of the gig worker, which is what you're saying you do, show me how you will live up to the promise as a government who with your scarce resources are unable to do the existing job already and you want to become my HR. Is it worth it? I mean, you may not call it that. I'm using that word. You may just social security broadly is what it is. But that is so tenuous. And I mean, I don't even understand social security these days. Is it health insurance? Is it that? And that itself is being delivered by different agencies. Concluding thoughts, how do you see this? I know wishful thinking is there, but practically on disbursement, do you think they have a plan thought through now because the rules have to come out?
Yes.
But if you don't have these clarified and have a plan, the rules are not going to come out, or it will come out with crappy rules. You need to know the quantum. You need to know the 5 things that we will start with today. Is that, do you think, already in their minds? Is their board members identified? Do you think they can hit the ground running, or they need another 1 year to do this?
I would say 1 year to do this because I like to come at it from a slightly different perspective. Right?
Sure.
MGR expanded a midday meal scheme to every single school in Tamil Nadu. First year, it was a disaster. Everybody said it was a disaster. All right. So, but they learned something from it. They learned, okay, this is how we do procurement. This is how we decentralize distribution. This is how, or centralized distribution, decentralized procurement, whatever. This is how we equip people to with skills to deliver this. Second year, it was a disaster, but slightly less of a disaster. Third year, it kind of improved a little bit, but there were still problems. The focus was very clear. This is what we have to do. By the way, it's not like people were patient with them. Everybody from World Bank to their own bureaucrats to the opposition said MGR is a fool for wasting so much money on this useless scheme which doesn't benefit anybody. Shut it down immediately. All of this is on record. He didn't. Said, I know what I'm doing. You tell me any suggestion you have, I will take. Tell me how I improve it by 1%, I will take it and do it. Don't tell me to shut it down. To the point where the Planning Commission, which was then headed by Manmohan Singh, wanted to discuss gently, in Manmohan Singh's way, do you think this is a good idea of doing this? MGR stood up, put his coffee down, stood up and walked out of the meeting. I'm not going to discuss this with you. Nobody to tell me what to do. Right? That very same Manmohan Singh, 10 years later, 15 or 20 years later, when he was PM, made the same scheme nationwide.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. So my point is, you're absolutely right. This is not going to be implemented with success on day one. It is going to take 1 year to figure out the rules. There are some schemes already in place. Government has said we'll create an insurance scheme that can be housed under this. There might be like a health insurance scheme which might get housed under this. There might be existing schemes for unorganized workers where they might say we will bring gig workers under this law to get the benefits of this scheme because it's easy to identify, easy to register, get a unique ID, create a database. There is going to be a 1 year process. In fact, Rajasthan hasn't even started implementing their legislation. Right? It will be a year in this year's December since the law was passed. No, it'll be a year soon. They haven't yet implemented because they are grappling with these challenges. They are kind of taking feedback. You're absolutely right. More time is not going to solve any of the problems. It is going to be this kind of constructive participation which is needed. Right? And this is where, having been part of some of these consultations, I felt the government's frustration because they've been talking about this for 2 years now. In like quietly, not in like a big public way yet. They've been trying to reach out to a platform saying, look, Social Security Code says this, but it has not been brought into effect. We want to try doing something. Can you come to the table to figure out what we can do at the state level? They've been rebuffed, right? This is something which recently I think the minister said also we've been trying to hold consultations. Only in the last 6 months, I will say that you're seeing slowly participation of platform companies in these things. My point here would be accept the reality this law is coming into effect. Accept the reality that this is the framework in which the gig workers' rights are going to be protected. This is going to impact the way you do business. Either you can die kicking and screaming and fighting and make it difficult for everyone, or you can say, we understand you're trying to solve a problem. We think there is a good way to do it and a not so great way to do it. We would like to be part of the solution. This is how we think you can do it. Some part of it may be accepted, some part may be rejected. I feel aggregators kind of need to be more upfront with at the table to say, this is how we think we can contribute and this is how we think this law can be made better. This is how implementation can be smoothened. This is how we think it can be. Don't come and say, don't even pass this law. Don't even think about it. We are only the best. We'll do everything for our workers. Who are you to tell us anything? That is not going to get you anywhere. We have gotten here because some people have taken that attitude in the last 5-6 years. Now that we are here, and now that there is a strong political push to do this, right? There's a strong governmental push to do this. The way forward will be for the likes of an IAMI or a NASSCOM not to wake up when a draft bill is put out, but to be actively engaging, to say, this is a new part of the economy. It can't be unregulated just because it's digital. You can't say we are innovative, don't touch us with government. It's been 10 years. The innovation is done. Now it's about the effects in society, right? So tell the government, tell society what your vision to protect the rights of gig workers is. It can't be the taxpayer, please take care of it. It's not. There are a million demands on that limited pool of taxpayer money. Tell us what you can do. Tell us how you will be part of the process. Tell us how you will contribute. And there is, when you say 10 days for the bill, it's not as if everything could snap into effect on the day the bill is passed. There is still, like I said, 1 year when you'll have to house the schemes under this board. You'll have to create the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure to collect the data, to register the workers, to register the platforms. There is still an enormous amount of time to engage with the government to constructively provide feedback to ensure that this can be a model for not just India but for the world. Like, look, India doesn't innovate just in terms of technology, it's also innovating in terms of governance, in terms of innovations of laws, where this is how India has found a way to smooth out the difficulties or the kinks that the platform economy creates. And the rest of the world should come to us, to Bangalore, to say, oh, how did you do it? Right. So I think that's the idea. And that's my big takeaway, that it's not just a few people who will come and who will kind of pass a law and go away. This is an issue we're going to deal with for the next 20, 30, 40 years. If we put in place the building blocks for a good solution, the solution will hold us instead and for the economy in the next 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
So that has to be the approach. It can't be that don't do this or don't try this or we'll only be the better one. There is nothing bad happening. No, we are past that stage now.
Yeah.
Engage constructively. And that engaging constructively isn't just at the stage of we'll get a perfect bill passed in 5 years. Not happen. Never. There is no such thing as a perfect bill, right? There is always going to be negotiation on what is a good way to implement it and what is not. If you engage on that implementation from day one, the bill is passed. It'll go much more smooth.
Awesome. On that note, I think we'll all hope that we engage constructively and get more out of this. It sets a pathway for good social coverage in a new way of industrialization, which is not the old paradigm of 9 to 5, 5 days employee and those things. We have new contracts, new ways of working, new ways of engagement, which are far more complex and entropic than we have ever had before. And I hope this bill is a good start and a very good intervention. Of course, there are lots of amendments to be done. And we are hoping that this goes well. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Alok, and clarifying this. And I hope this goes off well, and hoping for more constructive engagement on these things. Maybe we should catch up once more when it is out.
Yes, absolutely, Sathya. It was my pleasure. And it was great speaking to you also. And let's see, there's a lot more to happen on this front.